Let's talk about motion blur. In some cases, when you open up, for example, drone footage, maybe the ND filter wasn't available, and to get the exposure right, the shutter speed had to be turned up way too high. Boris FX has an answer for that. Within Boris FX Continuum, you can use Motion Blur ML. Take a look at this sweet drift. Yes, there's some motion blur closest to the camera, but it's pretty crispy, especially the structures in the background that are whipping around the corner. So let's find Motion Blur ML. Go up to the Effects palette and to BCC Blur. And right here you'll find BCC Plus Motion Blur ML. Just drag and drop, and the filter immediately begins to take effect. Click on Bypass to see the difference. It's using our model called Optical Flow ML version 1.0. The default settings are the fastest for rendering, but we're going to fine-tune it to make it look even more natural. Everything in the background looks smoother, but I still want to make sure the audience is focusing on the car itself. So back in the effect editor, let's turn on compare mode side by side. And let's adjust the wipe so we can see that background. Clearly, there's a big difference. Even though we enjoy the speed of these default settings, let's change the direction of the blur to make it more natural. We're going to choose Direction Both Premix. This mixes both forward and reverse blur, and the premix looks the most smooth and natural. Let's play this back from the top. And let's pause right here so you can see the blur in the stadium in the background. It looks super smooth. And now check out the pavement and those lines on the edge. Turn off compare mode and render to play back. The background now blurs and stretches appropriately, and the ground nearest to the camera feels natural and blurring while the car stays sharp, just like it should be. Within the effect editor, you can see that Motion Blur ML has two different models. Of course, by default, we're using the faster one, but let's click on a more advanced and slower version and play back. Now, this is all according to taste, but this model has a very dreamy look to it. Here's the comparison mode, the original on the left and the motion blur on the right. If you look at the original, the road has these natural flowing motions that are visible in the pavement, but also in the direction of this motion blur. However, in the advanced optical flow model, these movements take on a bit of a character of their own. One has sort of the curving pull, and the other has this sort of ice cream swirl look to it. One may look more optically natural, but the other has an undeniable aesthetic style to it. I'll leave that choice up to you. Each clip will react differently, but with a little practice you'll understand which model works best for you. Now let's take a look at this one. Classically, like most action cam footage, you can pause and see everything almost in perfect focus. At best, the camera might have some stretch in the glass on the edges, but this footage presents a particularly difficult obstacle. Again, let's go to the effect palette, to BCC Blur, and drag and drop BCC Plus Motion Blur ML. Immediately, it looks more natural, but let's look from a different angle. Under Output, you can see a bunch of different maps. A UV map, a colorized flow, and my favorite, the speed map. This shows in black what is moving least, and in white what is moving the most. But there's one other view that I missed, the output of motion vectors. Take a look at how these little dots have this stretching tail to show the direction the motion blur has added. The AI model knows what's in the foreground and what's in the background, and you can tell because the dots in the background, where there's less motion, are perfectly round. And the closer you get to the camera and the earth rushing below, you can see the stretch is more significant. Our main struggle will be the bike, handlebar, and hands because they're moving in different directions the entire time. Let's switch the output back to motion blur, and let's change up the direction. Like I said before, the more natural approach would be both premix. So let's render that and play back. A much smoother look, but we are running into some issues where the bike is interrupting the motion blur on the ground. Let's check out those motion vectors again. This looks correct, and then boom. The motion vectors show that the bike itself becomes sort of a river that diverts the flow. We can also change the direction to see which one looks more realistic. Now compare both premix to forward, and the direction seems to be a little bit better. And when we select reverse, the spot that should be the most blurry has the most clarity. So for the sake of this example, let's leave the direction on forward. Let's turn off those vectors, and since under the hands and handlebar we're still seeing some sharp footage, let's see what we can adjust. Let's switch the model to better and increase the shutter angle. This way we're going to cover for the artifacts. Now render that and play back. When it comes down to it, it's up to you to decide which one looks more aesthetic. And while we're at it, let's dive into some other parameters. I'm going to go ahead and grab BCC Plus, Motion Blur ML, drag it onto this shot right here. As you can see in this shot, there are some clouds closer and some clouds further away. The ones further away do not afford a whole lot of motion because of the parallax effect. Objects in the foreground look like they're moving faster than objects in the background. This is a big deal and an important principle for how this AI works. So to make this really visible for you, I'm going to exaggerate by increasing the shutter angle all the way up to the highest amount. And as you can see, the edge of things that are standing still, whether it's buildings, statues, or in this case, a satellite dish, begins to stretch in the direction of the motion. Not exactly the look we're going for. So the solution is to go to this parameter right here and limit low motion. And you'll see it dissipate and reduce from the furthest distance near the front. Watch as I demonstrate. The motion is now completely gone when we're at 24%. But we only want it to reduce the stretching on that satellite. So let's check out the before and after. I'm going to use the bypass, that's the before, and that's the after. Let's use compare mode and see the difference. Now, AI is kind of interesting because some footage will interact with it different than others. So for example, a piece of footage that works really well, this footage has clouds moving on the same plane, from left to right with no visible parallax. This is where Motion Blur ML works the best, especially when using the limiting parameter. So let's increase the amount to something crazy, which might be a kind of a cool look depending on what you're going for. And now let's limit the low motion. So that's pretty slick. Let's check out this last example. What's interesting about this is, yes, there's parallax, but the movement is coming towards the camera. Let's increase the shutter angle again. Right here, you can start to see that edge getting stretched. So let's limit our low motion yet again. So here's the before and the after. Looks fantastic. Let's do a comparison again. Those clouds are looking smooth. Not only did we enhance the footage, we enhanced the storytelling capabilities because the audience isn't distracted by unnatural looking footage. And this is one of the many applications of machine learning in Boris FX plugins. So please check out more at borisfx.com. My name is Zak Ciotti. Thank you for watching.